What's up, party people? Welcome to my channel. This is Project 12 Part 3, Witness the Fitness, where I'm going to be bringing you into the fold on what I changed regarding my overall fitness plan in an attempt to go sub 12 minutes on an awesome trail here at Mount Spokane called The Goods. I do want to caution you, what you're about to hear is a culmination of the finest bro science my brain could string together. Follow at your own peril, and let's get into it.
I love this trail. And now it's time for ice cream.
Once again, thanks a ton for joining me. My name's Toby, and this is my channel, Broken Spokes, where I'm taking you along for the ride. If you wouldn't mind doing that like and subscribe button, I'm doing everything I can to get you guys informative information. Let me know in the comments below what you do or you don't like, because we're going to get into some great topics today. So today's video is Project 12 Part 3, where I'm going over how I went about changing my fitness to go around my goal. I broke this down into 3 major sections. The first one being road biking, the second one being mountain biking, and the third one being strength training in my home gym. I'll discuss each one of these and how I use them to shape my fitness towards my sub 12-minute goal. Alright, so the first big phase that I need to talk about with how I adjusted my fitness is actually road riding. Now, I identified this goal early in the spring, and then through prime riding season, I needed to tackle this goal in the fall. And one of the big changes that I made was I made sure that I got some road riding in. In mountain biking, you'll need to be able to be out on the bike for a long time, getting plenty of vert and having enough leg power to handle the massive amount of energy it takes to head downhill. The road bike helps a ton with that. Here's how I did it, and it's very simple, but it's likely going to make some of the more experienced roadies in the group, it's probably going to make their heads explode. To recap, my goal was to get sub 12 minutes on a certain trail. I was going to go after this after a significant ride with a substantial amount of vertical. So I knew I was going to be on the bike for 2+ hours, have 4 different pushes based on the trails I selected, and I needed to be able to be fresh after about 3,000 feet of climbing. Here is my strategy for my road bike fitness. About once a week, I headed out on a 1 to 2 hour road ride to keep my fitness at its peak performance. I just never stopped during that whole time. One thing that's awesome about a road bike is you can leave your house, get a ton of cardio in, and you're back in time for supper. The second thing is that within that ride, I found 3 or 4 10 to 12 minute sections, and I would just hammer as hard as I could during those sections. These were either like long gravelly sections or that were really flat and I could really push, or they were hills where I was out of the saddle cranking. Out of the saddle pedaling really does translate directly into mountain bike riding. When I was doing this, I made sure that I had a heart rate monitor and I was watching my heart rate. In between those big efforts, I needed to make sure that my heart rate was low and I was actually recovering so I could get the most out of the hard push that was coming up. And honestly, that's it. I kept it pretty simple. I got out for a ride, 1.5 to 2 hours, 10 to 12 minute sections that I cranked hard on, and then I just kept moving. I just never stopped. And that was honestly how I did it. And is what that did is that allowed me to just keep or build all of my bike fitness throughout the entire season instead of sort of peaking and starting to fall. So that was it. That was honestly all I did to keep my road bike fitness up, and it helped a ton. So now for the second part, which is using my mountain bike to get better at mountain biking. Now, a lot of people will tell you, oh, just ride more, just get the miles in. And while this approach does work for a lot of people, this isn't how I was able to go about getting my sub 12 minute goal. I knew that my weakness was getting fatigued after 2 to 3 minutes of pushing hard. I needed to be able to ride hard for a lot longer than that, and I went about making my normal riding totally align with that. Each time that I went out for one of my training rides, I had my route in my head and a time I wanted to be back at the pickup. On top of that, I had features I knew I wanted to hit in a certain way. I wasn't racing, I was building skill, speed, and endurance. And so there are kind of 3 sub-bullets to this. And so the route length. Mount Spokane, or my training, the route that I want to train for, is quite a bit further away than my local trailhead. but my local trailhead is about a third the vertical. And so the challenge there was, how do I get longer descents at a local trailhead? Started linking together trails that could have a lot of climbing in them, or is what I would do is I'd start with an uphill sprint so that I could add time to my overall run. This involved getting over what was a fun descent and focusing on what would eventually be a longer or harder descent. I was trying to get uncomfortable before the harder stuff happened, you know, the big features or whatever, so that I had time under tension of hitting rough stuff and tough stuff while fatigued. Let me give you an example of that. Our trailhead has a massive plateau at the top, and so I would start at the climbing trail on one end, do about a minute of sprinting up that, come up over the peak, and then I would head down. This would get me totally exploded before I even started descending. I also introduced several traverses to have a lot of fitness built into the middle of the run. Essentially, I was building an artificially long trail where one didn't exist. Another thing that I did, very hard to ride trails so that I had to be on the very sharp end of my skill. I was pushing hard on hard trails. I think I heard Jesse Melamed say, to get fast, you have to go fast, and that totally resonated with me. Let's say you have a feature and you have the option of going around like a Strava line or slowing down and hitting it very precisely. I chose the latter as I wasn't chasing my Strava during my training. Focusing on the trail, riding it as you need in order to progress rather than what is the absolute fastest. Many people kind of get caught up on what is fast versus what they need to be a better rider. I knew where my focus was and really pushed to do exactly that. The last part is that I often just lapped during my training rides. I would just do the same trail over and over. As I was climbing back up from a descent, I would just think back on how I hit the trail, what I hit, how I could do it better, that sort of thing. Just kind of rerunning that descent in my head so that the next time I hit it, I would be just a little bit better, because that's what we're all about, just incremental improvements. These three things, right? Making longer routes, hitting technical features, and repeating the trails blew up my skill. I could not believe the amount of skill that I gained by just following that and actually deliberately riding. And I would totally impress upon anybody, if you want to get better, is to set time aside to focus on your progression as opposed to just doing a casual ride. But there's nothing wrong with casual rides. Riding with buddies is like 90% of the fun. I used this approach to get better at going fast for a long time, and holy moly did it help. Most people don't ride full runs until race day, and they end up totally smoked before their last stage. I knew that I was going to push hard, and I didn't want that to happen on my 12-minute run. Now, I will note, there is a lot of risk in doing this approach. You're pushing yourself hard, and mountain biking is an inherently risky sport. Do not do this and put yourself at risk. I knew right where my talent was going to run out, and I pushed it right to that level. I was also only doing this on trails I was very comfortable with and knew all about. Only you know that limit for yourself, so train wisely and take the things that I did with a huge grain of salt. Now it's time to get to something that I love chatting about, but have never done so in sort of a public forum like this, and that's the gym. I want to talk to you guys about how I used my home gym to build mountain bike specific fitness. My overall strategy with all of this is the KISS method. So keep it simple, stupid, and stupid being me, because I can get way too wrapped around the axle about things that don't really matter. So I have a very simple gym setup, and a lot of it is actually homemade. Hopefully I can be doing a gym setup video in the near future so you guys can maybe get some ideas as to what you can build yourself and not spend oodles of cash on. If I go back to my original video, I have a few weaknesses strength-wise that I know I need to work on. My hands, my shoulders, my back, and my overall power really needed to be improved. So after about 4 to 5 minutes, I just felt like I was hanging on for dear life and not really riding the bike, right? Bikes are so capable that you can get away with a lot more than we really should. And I just knew that after about 5 minutes, I was hitting that stage. So I set about changing that. Let me walk you through what I did. So for my hand and my grip strength, I focused a lot on carries, hanging from the pull-up bar, and I have a sled, and I was doing a lot of sled pulls. And so my normal workouts, I would just add in a grip strength portion to that. Let's say you're in the gym and you're doing deadlifts. Well, once you get done with your deadlifts, on your last rep, pick it up and just hold it for 30 seconds. Like that's just the little bit of increment that I was doing. And my neighbors probably thought that they lived next to a psychopath as I was just walking down the street carrying kettlebells or dumbbells or whatever. I'd love to actually ask what they think of that. One of the other things that I built was I actually built a wrist roller. I don't know if any of you have ever been wrecked by 5 pounds. Try doing 3 of these. It's incredible the amount of forearm strength you can gain from it. Okay, so for my shoulders, if you ever watch slow-mo video of mountain biking, you will probably be blown away by how much shoulders pushing and pulling that you do. The pros have just phenomenal technique on their pushes and pulls, and it just keeps that bike hugging the ground, and they're in total control. So to build shoulder strength, I added in high rep dumbbell bench presses, shoulder presses, jerks, overhead carries, among other things. To complement that, I used a lot of pull-ups and rows, like a lot of them. Every workout I was doing some sort of pull with my arms. The other thing that I really did is some raises. So just lightweight, doing overhead flies, lateral flies. There's just a number of things. These shoulder area exercises is going to surprise you with your bang for your buck. It is surprising how much you use your shoulders. Okay, now my back. Holy moly, how many of you and your friends have had issues with their backs while they're riding? You're in a compromised, bent over position for a long time, and back fatigue honestly just makes sense. There were a number of things I did to strengthen my back, particularly my lower back. My favorite was single leg deadlifts. These had compound benefits: balance on one foot, single leg strength, core stability, and of course posterior hinging strength. Start incorporating these things. I could not believe how much I just started falling in love with single leg deadlifts. I just want to make a point that the rower deserves an MVP award for the most effective training tool. There's almost no better bang for your buck than a rower, in my opinion. I chose it here for the long duration of hinged movement, like a bike, and the constant pulling force that you're going to need to do. The need for your back to be strong for a good pull, the core necessary to bring yourself back into the catch position. To add to this, I was also building up conditioning for the upcoming 12-minute effort, and it was absolutely priceless. If you're not rowing and you have access to one, start getting some repeats in on these to see your power and fitness improve. The last thing that I needed to talk about was my actual power. So having the ability to lay down a whole bunch of watts in small pedal strokes was key to keeping my speed during my 12-minute effort. Getting a pedal out of a corner when your legs are blown up is absolutely critical to maintaining your speed. And I will honestly say the rower was probably 60% of the gains that I made when it comes to power. Like I have said, get on a rower if you have access to one. I then incorporated things like kettlebell swings. I finished almost all workouts with 50 kettlebell swings as unbroken as possible. Some days I'd get it, some days I couldn't, but try that out. Is just pick up a weight you think you can get 40 in and see if you can get 50. It is incredible the amount of overall power and strength you'll get from 50 kettlebell swings. I then did a lot of single leg box jumps and box jumps in general. Get that explosive power in your quads and your calves, folks. And then for $30, you can get a 20-pound slam ball. Check these things out. 15 or 20 of these incorporated a few times in a workout, and oh man, it's just pure cardio, power. It's tough. You can actually also double these up and use these with wall balls, and that's what I did a lot of the time. The last thing that most people don't want to probably hear, and it's very unappealing, but it's also really, really effective, and that's burpees. Do them as they're intended. You can get some serious power transfer and cardio, and they're totally free. And it's all about that explosive movement back onto your feet, right? Off the floor, onto your feet, upright. I was already doing a pretty consistent weight training program 1 to 2 times a week. But what I did is when I had this goal is I made sure I was doing them at least 2 times a week, and I incorporated extra presses. I incorporated a lot of rows. I incorporated a lot of the rower, and then kettlebell swings, box jumps, and among other things. All of these are only effective if you're incorporating them consistently, and oh man, did I. The coolest part is they have the added benefit of making you look good naked. And if we're gonna get down to it, that's probably what we all work out for. So now to kind of wrap this up, that was my 3-part series. Is I had a once a week road training ride, and on that training ride, I had very specific 10 to 12 minute efforts. And then on my mountain bike riding, when I was able to sneak out during the week, I was very deliberate in my training rides. I chose trails that I knew, I repeated them, and I made them as long as I possibly could. And then in the gym, I focused a lot on my grip, my shoulders, my back, and my overall power. These are all things that any of you can do, and I think that they're very underrated for their simplicity. If there's anything I can leave you with, it's just that fitness is, I think, a lot more simple than people make it out to be. It's more about consistency than it is perfection. I knew that I just needed to be consistent and improve upon some of my weaknesses that I could build in. And so with that, I hope you learned something, and I can't wait to show you my race day video because I'm very, very excited about it. So stick around, stay tuned for some more.
Witness the fitness.